First of all, I do want to make some special recognitions here because you guys, we're all friends. But probably my very best friend, Belle is here today, my wife. So I'm excited that she's here. My men's small group is here. How neat is that? One of my very best friends, John Munson, is here, former councilman. John Hypes, I think it is. My friend and partner. Many of our staff, Liz Pierce and Jackie Hobbs, are here, so we appreciate that. Tino Mantella with the Technology Association of Georgia is here. We've got Tom Breuer with our Convention and Visitors Bureau on our board. There's a lot of great people here, a lot of good friends. So the good news is if I totally screw this up, you and I, we know each other well enough, we're going to be just fine. So absolutely. Well, also, before I get started, as the mayor of any city, there is a tendency, because there's one mayor and there's 6 council members, there is a tendency to kind of focus on the mayor. It's just the way it is. Like it, don't like it, it's the way it is. But I want to tell you that there are 7 of us, and the things that we're going to be talking about today, there's 7 of us making these decisions. There's 7 of us pulling together as a team with this vision, with this work. And not only that, backing up those 7, we have a room full of our directors for the city of Alpharetta. I'll be mentioning some of them later on today. I certainly want to thank my friend / city administrator, and I say friend first, Bob Regas. We couldn't do this without you either. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things we're going to be talking about, and you're going to say, there's going to be a temptation to say, well, gosh, that David guy, he's doing a great job. And I hope you think that. But I'm not going to be able to give credit every single time for every single thing. But let me just tell you, the council, the staff, the community, the team that is here. Brandon Beach is here with the chamber and the CID. He wears a lot of hats. There's a lot of folks here. You're all doing a great job. And with that, I just want to make sure that we start it just that way. Well, how many of you around your home have had that project that you know exactly what needs to be done? You know that it's a big deal, and that you know what to do, but you haven't figured out the how, and the how may be figuring out exactly the method, or it may be just finding the time or finding the experience to get something done. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I had just finished the election for mayor, and so I was, the 30-plus weeks prior, I had been going door to door. We went to just about 3,000 homes. We went to a lot of functions. I went to every event, always casting a vision, always talking about Alpharetta, as I do now as well, so I guess it was good practice. But that first Saturday, I remember sitting that first Saturday, and I was sitting on the couch and just kind of taking a deep breath, trying to take it all in. And I'm sitting there, and Candace was very kind and just gave me my space. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just staring at the fireplace. Now, the fireplace, I have never liked it. Up to that point, we have been there for 7 years. And I think I complained. I don't know how many times I complained. I complained quite a bit. The fireplace was ugly. The builder took whatever trim he found when the job was done building the house and kind of just pasted it up there. And then there was these marble slabs that I guess they just put epoxy and just kind of slapped them up there as well. Do y'all know what a hearth is? We don't talk about hearths in the South as much, but a hearth is the place that you're supposed to sit in front of the fireplace. Our hearth was 1 inch above the ground. You can't sit on 1 inch. And then the mantle itself was just kind of leftover trim. So I sat there, she left, the garage door went up. And so as I sat there, I decided, what, something's got to be done. So I got up, I walked downstairs into the basement, into my workroom, and I grabbed one of my very favorite tools, not the chainsaw, the other favorite tool. And it's a little blue crowbar. And I walked back upstairs, and I stood in front of the fireplace, and I stared at it for about 2 to 5 minutes, wondering if I was really going to do what I thought I was going to do. And so first thing I went was the trim. I peeled it off and threw it to the floor. And then the marble, that was fun too. I snapped it off and that little marble slab was gone. The hearth had to go. It was no hearth at all. And then I started looking at the mantle that was there. And I said, that mantle is far too high for where I want to put the television. I'd like to put a very big screen right there, and that mantle is too high, so the mantle went as well. And when Candace got home, it was like, oh shoot, what have I done? But isn't that the thing, is that for 7 years, I knew the what. But I never really got to the how, not in terms of the method, not in terms of taking the time or really taking the commitment. And when you look at history, isn't it true that the biggest goals in history are very easy to articulate? I mean, you look at the Revolutionary War, you got 13 colonies, right, spread across the eastern seaboard of what would one day be the United States, and they're getting pushed around by the British Empire. There's a lot of oppression going on. There's obviously the taxation without representation. And someone had this bright idea, the great idea, that, you know what, we should be independent. We should be our own country. What a fabulous idea. Now, how do you do that? Because remember, the British Empire is the superpower of the day with the biggest navy, the biggest army in the entire world. Fast forward to 1961, in the middle of the Cold War, and you have this space race going on, and Russia is beating the United States at every turn. And President Kennedy comes before a joint session of Congress, and he looks at them and he says, look, it's 1961. You know, before the end of this decade, we need to send a man to the moon and then bring him back safely, even though the only guy that we had sent in space at that time was just barely into space, one loop around the Earth. That was the goal. Easier said than done. A 5-year-old standing in their backyard can look, stare up at the moon and say, I want to go there. But the big question is how? And when your personal projects or your personal goals, whether it be a business that you may have considered creating or maybe you did create, or maybe it was a career transition, or maybe a complete career change. Those type of things, it's always easy to understand the what. It's very easy to understand what should be and could be for your life, for your business, for your family. But really, where what's die is in the how. 2 years ago, we came to you and the residents of Alpharetta and the businesses of Alpharetta with two goals, or two whats, and a promise. And those two goals, the first one was we wanted to make Alpharetta a hometown for the majority of its residents. And we want to be the #1 technology city in the Southeast. And our promise was this. Our promise is that we were going to pursue these goals and that we were going to work out the how without compromising on the level of service, on the level of stewardship that Alpharetta has become very, very well known for. And so let's talk about the first goal. That first one was to make Alpharetta a hometown for the majority of its residents. Now, in general, people consider a hometown, if you just ask, oftentimes it's the city they grew up in. Here's the problem for Alpharetta. Alpharetta, 30 years, who lived in Alpharetta 30 years ago? Oh, we got some. Look at that. Inside the city limits. Phil Kingery, definitely. All right. Well, 30 years ago, Alpharetta had 3,000 people, okay? Today, Alpharetta has 62,000 people. So as great as Phil Kingery is, you're not going to be able to carry it for all of us, but thank you. But so with that in mind, what we got to do is we've got to make a city where people will choose Alpharetta as their hometown. And I'll be honest with you, if those of you who know me know that this is an item of passion for me. It's the very reason that I ever ran for office, was to try and find and make a way for Alpharetta to be a hometown for the majority of its residents. And I've talked to a lot of city leaders across different cities in Georgia and beyond. And I've looked at a lot of towns where things and places that we would like to be one day. And here's the things that I've discovered and concluded with respect to being a hometown. First of all, is that you can't be a good or a great hometown if you don't have a great downtown. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a downtown is built on food and music. And then the third thing is that and my apologies to Reverend McQueen of a Methodist church, but you've got to adapt, maybe the Methodists have the same strategy, but you've got to adapt the Baptist strategy of invest and invite. Is that the Methodist strategy too? I don't know.
It might be. Let me hear it.
Invest. Reverend McQueen's talking on behalf of the entire Methodist congregation. Invest and invite, is that a Methodist thing as well?
We do that.
We're going to call it the Baptist-Methodist plan. But so those are the things that when we looked at cities that did a great job either reinvigorating a downtown or creating a downtown out of whole cloth, what we noticed is that there was an invest and an invite strategy. Mayor Wood walked in a second ago, and I learned a lot at looking at what had happened with Canton Street. Everyone likes Canton Street in Roswell. It's a beautiful place. I keep trying to tell him it needs to be a gas station district. He won't listen, but that's all right. But so this invest and invite. And so what you saw 2 years ago, you voted in favor of a $30 million bond to help invest in the city of Alpharetta. And if you've been by Main Street or Academy Street right there, right now what you see is the bones of what is going to be a very beautiful city hall. If you've driven on the backside of Haynesbridge Road, you've seen this 5-acre park that will be coming through, is starting to be developed. On the front side, across from Smoke Jack, there is a 1-acre square, and if you look at it from any height, you can actually see the outlines and where the roads are going to be. The parking deck will begin shortly, and so that investment is very critical. And the thing is that it really, people are talking and people are interested as a result of that investment. But the investment itself is not enough. We also had to be focused on and thinking about the invite side. And so over the last 2 years, you've probably noticed that we've really ramped up the special events that we have in downtown. And the reason being is that because we want to create a place for people to come together, to do community together. And so we've seen a lot of repositioning those events around food and music. And one of my very favorite ones, and one that just kind of, in my mind, just hits the nail on the head. And I see Janet Rogers here. Is Kim Dotson here? She's not. We sat down, actually, the conversation started with Councilman Gilvin. He had just gotten back. I think he had went to Tin Pan Alley up in Nashville, and we were talking about it. And the more he was talking about it, I was like, you know what? That is exactly what we need to be doing here. If we're going to build a downtown around food and music, we've got to be able to capture that. It's not enough to just have a cover band. We need to capture this, because Tin Pan Alley, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a songwriters festival. It's a week-long songwriters festival. But so we sat down. I sat down with Janet, and I sat down with Kim, and we came up with a plan. And I'll be honest with you, we've got such a great team that we can put an idea together and they run with it. And so we had a couple of meetings, and we brought in a live after dark, I think it is, something after dark, home after dark. And so we got some good ideas from them. And I'll be honest with you, I said it with our staff. They took it, and the next time I saw it, we were coming back from the Georgia game, and Candace and I think we got in just a little before 5. And so we walked over to Smoke Jack, and in Smoke Jack, in the corner, was a band playing, which was like, this is great. This is really neat. And so we walked out of Smoke Jack and into Hop Alley, and on their back deck was another band playing. And we walked out of Hop Alley, and we walked to Milton Avenue, which was closed down. And all along the street were these little booths with different artists and musicians who were singing the songs that they had written and selling their CDs. And it was really cool. Each one had their own little crowd, their own little group. And then everything culminated in this staged event. And there were 5 songwriters up there, and they had written songs for everyone from Stevie Nicks to Tina Turner to Sarah Evans and some other folks. And they just basically would play the song they wrote, even though they weren't the performer on the version that you've heard. And then they would tell why they wrote it. And it was really, really neat. And you saw families, you saw cul-de-sacs, you saw neighbors together experiencing that. And that was really just hitting the nail on the head. And so the special events generated a lot of interest and a lot of people figuring out, yes, this is downtown. They knew where downtown was. But we knew we needed something more. And so we started talking about what could we do as a consistent event. And we were very fortunate to be able to partner with a great team of food trucks. But there was the question of, is this the right path for Alpharetta? We've got these special events. We've increased them. We've made them bigger. Are people going to have event fatigue? Well, it turns out that the food truck alley was a huge hit. In fact, the first one had, I think, about 1,000 people. And then over time, it grew and grew. And then some of the biggest events that we had were over 5,000 people on a Thursday night. 5,000 people on a Thursday night. If you go back 3, 4, 5 years, taking the entire months of June, July, and August, you didn't have 5,000 people downtown the entire time. And so with that, then we added a local music scene as well. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with Matilda's, but it's just down the road there on the South Main Street. And so on the 4th Thursday, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau was helpful in sponsoring this, we added Matilda's, and the scene continued to grow. And so we're working very hard on the how, But here's the best part. We're not there yet. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to skip to the end on that part. We're not there yet. We still got lots of work. If we're going to have a downtown that brings people to choose Alpharetta as their hometown, we've got some work to do. But here's the thing, it's working. The Food Truck Alley is what inspired and brought about Hop Alley. Also, Salt from Roswell came to Alpharetta. We have another restaurant called South Main Kitchen. And this is in addition to the restaurants. I know Chris Sedgwick is here today. Pure Taqueria was a pioneer and has done a great job, and we're glad that Pure is here. And I won't say anything else, but there might be something to talk about later. So, but it's starting to generate that activity, starting to generate that life. And Peter, our economic development director, has gotten plenty of requests, lots of requests for the other side of the street when we get the private side of the new city center project done, of restaurants that want to be in there. And so we're working on it, and we're making a lot of progress. Now, of course, we had this other goal of being the #1 technology city in the Southeast. Well, that's a fine goal to say. Hiram, Georgia could have that same goal, right? The question and the problem is how. And so what we began to realize is that 2 years ago, when we started assessing what was in Alpharetta, Alpharetta had a great reputation as being a great place for Fortune 1000 companies, as being a great place for Fortune 500 companies, and having fiber optic cable. But as we began to assess and look at what Alpharetta had and what our strengths were, what we realized is that it was so much better than we ever could have imagined. Now, Atlanta is a fine city. I was born in Atlanta, and Atlanta has a great technology scene. They have 300 technology companies in the city of Atlanta. That's a lot. But as we learned and began to understand what was here and our strengths, we learned that Alpharetta has 600 technology companies. That's one technology company for every 100 residents. It's a lot. Now, to put that in perspective, Austin, Texas, which is most routinely thought of as the #1 technology city in the Southeast, has how many? 600 technology companies. Now, here's the best part. While Alpharetta has 600 technology companies, around our borders in Roswell and Milton and Johns Creek and South Forsyth, there's another 300 technology companies for a total of 900 technology companies. That's the highest concentration of technology companies anywhere in the Southeast. And so once we learned that, once we were figuring, really the blessings of what Alpharetta has, we began to realize that, what I know, what the council knows, what staff knows is not enough to reach that goal. So we began to find the very smartest and brightest folks we could with respect to technology. And the good news is they were in our city. So we created the Alpharetta Technology Commission, which basically took the CEO level folks from 10 of our top and our largest companies. Jonathan LeCompte's here today. I know he's on our technology commission. Tino Mantella is with TAG. He's on our technology commission. If I missed somebody, I'm sorry. But we wanted to use the leadership of the large companies as well as the emerging companies that were headquartered here and the partners to brand Alpharetta as a technology city of the South, to make sure that we talk about the fiber optic cable that Alpharetta has, and that's fantastic. But that's been there for 15 years. So we're using their knowledge and their leverage to figure out, okay, what's next? What do we need to do to continue to lead? We're also looking at ways to create an incubator and be a place for startup technology companies here in the city of Alpharetta. And here's the thing. Just like with downtown, we're not there yet. With the technology, we're not there yet. But guess what? It is working. Last year, there was two big stories in terms of jobs in the area. And I would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't acknowledge the Brandon Beach with North Fulton Chamber and Progress Partners, but it's a team effort. But last year, the two big stories for North Fulton job-wise was the 400 jobs for EY, for EY's Global IT, and the 900 jobs in Roswell for GM. This month, and this was going to be so much cooler if we didn't have to reschedule the state of the city. But this month, as a team, we landed Fiserv, which will be bringing 2,500 jobs to the city of Alpharetta. It's the biggest jobs announcements we've had in the history of our city. And the thing is that that 2,500 is part of a bigger picture. Between this state of the city and the last state of the city, we've added 3,500 technology jobs, all high-paying jobs. So we're excited about that. It is working, and we are becoming the technology city of the South. Now, we told you there was 2 goals and a promise. And again, the promise was that we're going to pursue goals like this, and we'll continue to pursue that. We're going to pursue the goal of being the hometown for the majority of our residents, but our promise was that we would not waver on the level of service and on the stewardship that Alpharetta has become so well known for. And I'm just going to point out a few things. Now, public safety is certainly I think our primary obligation. Unless we get that right, we can't do anything else. And this year, our rolling average from the FBI's 3-year crime statistics, it's the lowest it's ever been for Alpharetta since they started measuring it for Alpharetta. Thank you, Gary. The burglaries, which is a thing I think that probably the most serious crime that I think we can have an impact on, it's the lowest per capita of any city in the metro Atlanta area. So thank you again, Gary. Appreciate that. Now, the finance situation, how we do the money, Tom Harris is doing an excellent job there. We're still one of 2 AAA-rated cities in the state of Georgia. We have also, well, I mentioned that on the economic side, we have continued to have the lowest unemployment rate in the state of Georgia. I just had to get that out there. But this time, every year a city is audited, and like it or not, it's audited by an independent audit company. And this time, the independent audit company, well, usually they have just a list of things, and sometimes they just have to find something and say that you need to correct something. Well, this year, for the first time in our history, the independent auditor had absolutely no recommendations. So, Tom, you have nothing to improve on. So, just keep doing that. Our Parks and Rec this year was named the #1 Parks and Rec for a city of over 50,000 people. So, thank you, Mike Perry and your staff. Good job. Okay, but those are facts, right? I mean, those are statistics. I'll be honest with you, I get the great privilege of working with our staff and seeing them one-on-one, but nothing can be a substitute for seeing them under pressure when it really counts and when it really matters. How many people were stuck on February 11th somewhere on a road in the ice? How many had a double-digit commute time from downtown or something? Yeah, it was something that I've never seen before. But I want to point out, first of all, the good news is we had salt trucks running by 12 o'clock and they completed their first round by 2. The bad news is by that time, all the cars were on the roads. It was hard to work on them. But what really impressed me was seeing our staff at work. We had a police officer who was trying to make it into work, couldn't get here. So you know what she did? She got out of her car and began directing traffic right where she was until 1:30 in the morning. We had a communications officer that when everybody else was trying to get home, her shift was starting, so she was trying to get to work. And so we sent a car, and we went and got her, and we brought her to work. We had former councilman John Munson is here, and I'll brag on him a little bit. He runs into this guy who just had surgery, he had 2 broken wrists, and he decides to walk out of North Fulton Hospital, and he's going to make his trek in shorts to Georgia 400. Maybe the medication was still on. So John takes him to Pete's place at Engineering and Public Works. They get him a coat, a blanket, some coffee, and then the next morning they took him home. There were some great rescues that happened as well. There was an accident on Waters Road. We couldn't get a fire truck there to help that person, so they just got out of the fire truck, carried everything they needed, got the lady, got her to our hospital. There was a school bus that stalled out at Clubhouse Drive in Windward, and so we sent another fire truck over there, and they took those kids to the fire station, called their parents, and got them home. There was Fire Station 3 where Mr. Regas was. There was a mother there with her family. The police headquarters had multiple people that were stranded that were staying there as well. We opened up the rec center as a shelter. And in the entire evening, I'm getting texts, I'm getting calls from just different people who either A, knew me or figured out a way to contact me. I guess it was easier than 911. And so I'm trying to connect people as best I can. And I'll be honest with you, by the time it got to be around midnight, and Candace saw that we were just kind of I was just kind of, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to, I can't go to sleep because, there might still be something going on. And so she grabs this basket and stole all the kids' snacks and put it in this basket. And so we go out and we start walking, and we walk to the front of the neighborhood, and there's about 20 cars just abandoned just wherever, right at the top of the neighborhood. And in one of the cars, there's a guy who's decided he's just going to weather it right there in his car. And so we grabbed him and said, look, let's just take you to the shelter. And it's about 12:30 at night. And I'm thinking, when I get to this shelter, I'm probably going to run into the poor employee who drew the short straw that had to work it, and everybody else, made their way home. But when I get there, I see Director Mike Perry, who has already been to Walmart with blankets, with food, and taking care of these folks. And not only did I see Mike Perry, I saw Director Richard McLeod helping, and then other staff members as well. And it was just really neat to see that people were doing things way above and way beyond. So when I tell you all these, the awards and accolades, they're great. We want to keep getting them. We want to keep performing that level, but nothing shows you how great a staff, how great employees we have without looking at and seeing it firsthand when it really matters. And what I was also impressed with, a week or so later, we had the next event. And we thought this was going to be much worse because while the first event was snow, and it kind of happened at an inopportune time, we were expecting heavy, heavy ice. And so with Director George and staff, we put our Emergency Operations Center together, and we were ready. We had 36 patrol units all around the city monitoring the safety needs. We had 20 employees from our Engineering and Public Works who were monitoring road conditions and making sure we got the salt as timely as we could. This was kind of cool, we had 30 chainsaw crews just in case something fell. But the city was ready to go, and it was a very prepared city, and the professionalism of the folks that are serving you is just amazing. And seeing it in that context, to me, is so much more valuable than the awards, though we've won quite a few in different categories, and that's fantastic. But seeing it firsthand is really, really cool. Well, so we talked about certainly the downtown, hometown situation, and we talked about the technology. We've talked about the promise. I want to say real quick that the technology and the downtown are working together in a really neat way, and that they seem like they would be kind of pretty far apart. But one of the things when you attract technology companies, it's about creating a technology culture. And people want to, they have to work, but just like you, people aren't all about work. They want to work in a place that they want to be. And we believe that downtown can start to create that. But one of the best examples is Avalon. I can't go through this speech without talking about Avalon. I passed it today somewhere around, 7 o'clock this morning. It's already buzzing. I mean, they're working on it. It's coming up out of the ground like a mushroom. And but Avalon it's 86 acres. It's a $600 million project. It's 500,000 square feet of retail. There'll be a movie theater there with 12 screens. There'll be anthropology. You've probably heard all the tenants that are going to be there. Orvis, for those of you who are fly fishers. But so there's going to be a lot of great things. But what the really neat thing is, it's also a gigabit community. Y'all have probably heard about the Google Fiberhood situation, and I've gotten a lot of emails. Why isn't Alpharetta trying to do that? We are trying to get on that list, by the way. But here's the good news. Avalon will have the same speed as those Google Fiberhoods, and it'll be the very first fiberhood in Georgia. And to put it in perspective, the internet speed that will be capable there is 100 times faster than what you're currently experiencing now. And we'll have the very first one, and fiber will be going to every resident, every restaurant, every business in that area. So we're excited, not only what it means to bringing downtown and our technology together, but for what Avalon will be in terms of technology, in terms of a place that sets Alpharetta. It would be an understatement to say that it's a game changer. Well, with these goals, and you can start to see kind of what the how is doing and how we're approaching it. There's that speech that I mentioned with respect to President Kennedy. He is really neat because he actually answered the question is how do you get to the how? And what he said is, look, there's no sense in agreeing and desiring for Alpharetta to advance its position with respect to the U.S. space race if we're not willing to do the work and bear the burdens. And so that's where it comes to in figuring out how. How is not always just figuring out the method. How is determining what exactly it's going to take you to do and being committed to doing that. How often kills what, because how seems too risky, too big, too messy, too uncertain. What I wanted to tell you today is that your council, your staff is committed to figuring out that how, and that we are making significant progress in that how. So what I want to leave you with is this. The state of the city of Alpharetta has never been better. And I believe 2014 will be one of our very best years in Alpharetta's history. Thank you, and God bless you.